Hey guys, Mr. Clark here. I just wanted to spend a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes or so, talking about Beautiful Audio Editor, right? Yesterday, well, actually, I'm doing this recording on Monday, so Monday's assignment was a bit of an experiment to see how you guys did with Beautiful Audio Editor with a limited amount of sort of introduction, training, and so forth. And the early returns were really quite good, meaning I was really pleased to see from you how you did with this and get your feedback. Some of you said, oh, well, it was tough. It was difficult to sort through all the bits and pieces. Some of you said, yeah, it was that, but it was also, once you played around with it a little bit, it was kind of cool. That's good feedback. Those are both awesome examples of feedback, and I really appreciate the energy, effort, and the communication that you provided to help guide me a little bit on this. This is something that I'm very excited about. It's an area that I'm personally very interested in. I hope you find it to be interesting as we move forward, which we'll be doing over the next week or so, because there are lots of different ways to use this. Okay, so we'll be exploring those a little bit now. Okay. The web address is in front of you, right? And again, my picture may be in the way of some of this, but you can see it's the Beautiful Audio Editor website, which is also in your course materials for the day. Okay, so there's nothing unexpected about that. Now we're going to go over to the app itself. So here we are. This is the basic interface of Beautiful Audio Editor. Okay, pretty much a blank screen, a lot of blank space anyway. But then you do have these vertical lines, and those are time intervals, that is, lengths of time in seconds. Okay, and you can make them, you can make it finer or broader. That is, you can look, it's almost like zooming in on things. We'll look at that in a couple of minutes. I do want to talk about right now, there's nothing really in here other than those lines, because we haven't started recording anything. We haven't imported anything yet. Okay, so that's something we're going to be exploring right now. I know you saw a video. There was a few minute long video on this that was an introduction that was by a podcaster. And I wanted you to look at that just to get kind of a quick look at things. But I wanted you to see this now in context, the context of how we will probably be using this. And you may find some cool things as we go along, ways of using this or techniques within it that I'm not showing you necessarily, that you could bring up as well that would be kind of cool to look at. So I'm going to start by just recording a bit. That's it. That's really easy and straightforward. And we'll talk about the toolbars and so forth up along the top, these icons that I'm pointing to now, and a few other little items as well. So here we go. In order to record in Beautiful Audio Editor, if you go down to the bottom, you see this green button that I'm pointing to now. And the green button is just like a button. A lot of apps have this, right, to start and stop and so forth. Back in the old days, when you had analog, that is not computer-based recording devices, they would have a button, a literal button that you would push and it would click and stuff. But that was before we were recording on computers. The recording would have been done on magnetic tape, which we can talk about separately. But at any rate, I'm going to record now. I'm going to start talking for a bit, and we'll move forward from there. All right, so now Beautiful Audio Editor is recording. And we know it's recording because if you look up here, See this little green triangle with the numbers above it that's moving left to right? That is showing us how many seconds ago I started recording. It starts at 0 and it goes up. We're at about 30 seconds now, and I'll go to maybe 35 seconds, something like that. Well, we'll go to 40, let's say. If I go back down to the bottom and click that button again, notice it did two things. One is all of a sudden you can see what is a sound clip, what's called a sound clip. Okay? And that was the end of the recording because I clicked to stop recording. But the playhead is still moving. But the playhead's just indicating where the playhead is, right? I mean, so the playhead's not actually indicating anything other than if I were to start recording again now, that's the point at which it would start recording. Okay, the playhead is important to help identify places where we want to cut things and when we want to stitch clips together. But for now, we don't need that. In order to stop that, you would go all the way here in the upper left corner, where you see if I hover over it, these tools at the top are really cool because if you hover over them, if you put your mouse over them, that's what hover means, it will tell you what this does. Click to pause, right? And it stopped the playhead at 1:53 seconds. So right now we've got a couple of things just in under 2 minutes, right? And that's what's cool. Once you get this down, you start clicking very, very quickly. I mean, I've worked with, I am not an audio engineer, a professional audio engineer. I have a small home studio and I've recorded some of my own work in professional studios, so I know some professional engineers, and they move so quickly. And I know a lot of you are probably familiar with people who on computers in general move very quickly and are very precise. Well, that's good audio engineers they know when to be fast and they know when to slow down and pay close attention. So the playhead's at 1:53. Now, a lot of times you want to go back to the beginning, right? And sometimes you might have such a long clip. And this is not just true of Beautiful Audio Editor. This could be true of any audio editing software that you can't even see where the beginning of the clip is, right? Once you start getting a lot of tracks, a lot of clips, a lot of recorded video, a lot of audio, a lot of imported audio, it gets hard to keep track of all this stuff. Right now we have one track, which is this lane up here, right? And we'll add another track or two before this session is over. But you can see this actually gives you a visual cue of what the sound file looks like. Now, before we go any further, one of the first things you should always do in any file, but definitely if you're in Beautiful Audio Editor or any other file that you really care about, is give it a name. So up here where it says New Project, I'm going to call this, let's see, I'm going to call it BAE. I'm going to highlight it first. And I'm going to call it BAE for Beautiful Audio Editor. You can call it whatever you want, your first one, it doesn't matter. BAE, and I'll put a hyphen, introduction. Okay, so that's the file name. The next thing I want to do actually on this one is name this track. Okay, so that track was just, I'll call it voice intro, because that's all it was me speaking with a little bit of an intro. So I'm going to call this voice intro. Okay. And so far that's it. There's other stuff over here. Gain is amount of added or subtracted volume. So it's like a volume adjustment. And we'll look at that not today too much, but in other days. And you can play around with it. By the way, I should say the documentation for Beautiful Audio Editor is in today's course material as well. That is a link to it online. Okay? Now, one of the things to be aware of that's really useful, some of these lines, they do indicate gaps between, for instance, gaps between places where I paused or where I was speaking louder or softer or things along those lines. So let's say instead of that, I wanted to do something that was, well, we could do that. Let's look at this more closely. You're familiar with magnifying glasses on apps where you click and it makes stuff larger on the screen. Well, the way it's done in Beautiful Audio Editor is if you go back down to the bottom and go where it says zoom down here and increase that, watch what happens. Now this is really kind of cool because this is much easier. Whoops, my mistake, I went too far. And I wasn't paying attention is what happened actually. So this is kind of cool though, because you can see this stuff very, very, very close up, right? So I'll go back to the beginning again, right? So the playhead's back here, but the clip starts here. So the track is this entire width, right? But the clip, you'll notice if I click on this clip, right? You can select that separately. The selection tool, by the way, is up here. And that's important because when you're in split mode, for instance, which is where you split a clip, and actually I'll do that in just a second, you then need to get back to whatever other mode you wanted to be in, okay? So let's say, for instance, well, let's give it a listen. You can see that it's at 0 at this point. So I'm going to listen. All right, so now Beautiful Audio Editor is recording. And we know it's recording. Okay, so now I'm going to do something, and I'm going to add a little bit to this. Because if we look at this, and by the way, a lot of times if you want to isolate your sound so that your recordings come out really well, it's helpful to wear headphones. I'm not wearing headphones today, so we may get a little bit of, hopefully we don't get feedback, but it's possible. So it will help. It'll make your recordings better usually if when you are editing recordings, you wear headphones. And you guys all have headphones, so that's a good thing to know. But notice you could tell definitely when I paused, all of a sudden you have this sort of dead space in between the louder audio clips. That can be useful, okay? Sometimes it allows you to move things, you can split things up that way. So for instance, let's look at, well, I think what I'll do is I'll go up here. See this little icon here that says enter split section mode, okay? Well, let's say I wanted to, and as a guide, I'm going to grab the playhead up here. I wanted to split this section right here. Let's say I wanted to put this little bit closer to here, or maybe I want to move it a totally different place. That's entirely possible. Well, I want to split it there. Okay, so I'm going to click split section mode. Now notice it gives you information about how to do this. In this mode, split a section of audio in two by clicking on it and releasing where you would like to split it, okay? But it refers specifically, it says a section of audio, you're talking about a clip, a single clip, because once you've split this, and I'll show you how this works right now, and also up here, it's telling me now press to split. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to split. I don't know if I said about right here, someplace like that. Oh yeah, right there. It is right there at the playhead. Okay, now, so that's the playhead, right? and that's where we're going to split. But again, I don't want to split. If you're doing something like this, by the way, I should mention this while I'm thinking about it. You don't really, you want to split, you'd rather split to the left, like I just did, of that next piece of audio. If you're going to go a little bit one way or the other, you'd rather not cut off the audio part. You'd rather cut out the dead space. Okay, so now we've split these two, but I can also then, let's say I want to move these two sound elements closer together. I then can go like, hopefully, right there. There you go. And split the clip again. Now at this point, this is really nice because if I want to get rid of this bit in between, because I want to tighten the narrative up a little bit, the way I can do it is, again, look up here, the X, and to remove section, okay? That's like a delete. A lot of people think in a lot of software, the delete key would work in this particular scenario. Just hitting delete won't necessarily work in this scenario. But if you click on this tool, you go like this, then go where you want to delete, and there it goes. Okay, so that's some basics in editing. Now, if I want to get out of delete mode, okay, the way to do that is go to select mode right here in the upper part of the screen. Now it says you can drag a section to move. They give you a lot of little tips as you go, so in case you forget, because it can be it's a lot to take in at once. So let's say I want to move this. Well, look at this. I just click and drag that whole thing over. That's pretty sweet. So it comes up like that. Now notice if I start to overlap them, I can do that too. Now that's a whole different thing, but it's kind of fun. So what I want to do, let's say you wanted to combine another track and some other sounds. Well, I think what I want to do is a little more recording, and I won't spend too much time on all this, but I did want to give you enough to work with where you're getting a sense of how this works and you can play around with it some more. And that's what we'll basically be doing between today and tomorrow. It will be in a full write-up in your course materials. However, that's what we're going to be doing. Then we'll add to that. I will also include in today's course materials so that I don't forget about this. I'd like to have you tomorrow work on inserting other types of sound files, not just recordings you've made. But I'd like you to, continue today working with different tracks. So we have the voice intro track over here. Now we're going to do a little more recording. I'm going to go back to the very beginning. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in some of this dead space in between the narrative, that is in between the audio sections, I think I'm going to snap my fingers. We'll see if it comes out. Okay. So let's see if this goes. So I centered us. I put us back to playtime 0. And now I'm going to record, and we'll see what happens. And I'll just record a bit, and then we will move on. All right, so now Beautiful Audio Editor is recording. And we know it's recording because if you look up here, see this little green triangle with the numbers above it that's moving left to right? That is showing us how many seconds ago I started recording. It starts at 0 and it goes up. We're at about 30 seconds now. And I'll go to maybe 35 seconds, something like that. Well, we'll go to 40, let's say. If I go back down to the bottom and click. Okay. Now, I stopped that. So let's see what this did for us. First thing I want to do, actually, I generally go back to move the playhead back to 0. Okay. And I want to see what these sound like. but I want to call this snapping fingers or something like that. So this second track is going to be called finger snap, I'll call it. All right. And a lot of these other controls here that I'm pointing to now, gain and pan. Gain is kind of a volume adjustment. Pan is, some of you have probably heard stereo sound recordings. And pan just means when they make the sound sometimes go either, it would go from one ear to the other if you have headphones on. If you have speakers in a room, it might go from one side to the other. It's kind of a cool effect that I don't know when it became popular or when it became in common use, but it's in a lot of audio production now. So now what we have is you can mute or solo any of those tracks. So if I solo means you're only going to hear that track. You'll see it shaded out the top track. So if I start, I think I'm at playheads at 0, yes. If I start playing back now, all right, so now Beautiful Audio Editor is recording. And we know it's recording now because if you look up here, now do you notice how you're actually hearing me talking, but it sounds sort of faded a little bit, okay, in between the snaps? So the reason for that is that I wasn't wearing headphones, which means and remember I told you, you should wear headphones really if you're going to do a lot of this kind of stuff so that you don't get that sort of spillover. And sometimes you even get feedback. Now, there is a solution for this. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I will explain it to you because it's something that we can do fairly simply. You just have to identify, and I'm going to do this because, and again, normally I would be wearing headphones if I were editing and recording at the same time, but I obviously didn't do that today. So if I go like this, and you listen up, all right, so you're getting a little bit of that. Now this piece right here, that's the snap. Now the interesting thing about this is what you could do now is you could actually split and isolate this snap. And I'll show you how to do that. I think probably a lot of you can guess how to do that. Is if we can isolate this by going like this and maybe over here. Haha. Now what we could do is potentially, and we'll see how this works, we could get rid of, and I think I will, I'll get rid of the beginning of this thing. Okay, so that should be our first snap. And I'm guessing, I don't know, I haven't listened this far, but I'm guessing this is our second snap. So what I'm going to do, we're going to see if that's the case. And if it is, then the solution to this problem, in this case, if there were a lot of feedback, there would be no solution. But in this case, the solution, well, this may work. Let's see. So I'm going to set my playhead to 0. Okay. I am now going to, I'll leave both of these tracks live. So I'm no longer going to solo this. So you will hear both tracks, which means you'll hear only the original track I recorded up here. And then when you get to here, you'll hear the snap. Let's see if this works. All right, so now Beautiful Audio Editor is recording. Yeah, that's exactly what you want. And that's really encapsulates what probably 50% of audio engineering is in terms of moving things around. Okay. You can layer these things over and over and over again. But think about it, if you were, I don't know, some of you may be singers. If you wanted to do a really nice harmony, you could record one person. Now, it's important that you would probably need to wear headphones when you record your individual parts. In fact, a lot of professional recording, not everybody's playing all at once in the band, right? A lot of times what you do is you do a live session track that's just to get everybody in the same mode, and then people go back and listen to that live track but record their individual parts later on what's called overdubbing. Okay, so that worked out pretty well. Now if I keep playing this back for a second, we know it's recording. This is the other one, so I want to isolate this one just so that you can hear one more time how this cleans the thing up, simply from if you have knowledge about how the recording software works. Got to get that one. There we go. So now what I want to do is take out this section in between, right? There it goes. And then there's probably, one other one. But so what this should do is have a nice narrative coming along, a snap, nice narrative coming along, because I'm keeping both tracks live. Solo means that you only hear that track. Mute means you don't hear that track at all. We'll do a lot with volumes going up and down also. But at any rate, I don't want to keep you too long on this, and we will be doing some of this in future sessions as well. So I am going to, and I'll clean this file up before next time we meet. So let's listen to this one more time, playhead to 0. And you can drag this playhead. I don't know if you saw me doing that at all, but you can just drag it as well. And all right, so now Beautiful Audio Editor is recording. And we know it's recording because, and there you go. So it was really a clean vocal, a clean snap, a clean vocal again, even though I recorded, right, not having headphones on, and that would not be the ideal scenario, but we were able to clean it up. In fact, there's a whole field of audio engineering called forensic audio engineering, where they try to find like little bits and pieces of sound and try to piece them together later for a lot of reasons. We'll actually talk about that because I have he's an engineer I've worked with before who has done some of that kind of work. So we'll talk about that too. At any rate, I want you guys to be able to explore this thing, play around with this thing. And again, this is for Tuesday's assignment. Tuesday is the, 25th, right? So you'll be looking at this on Tuesday and play around with it some more. The specifics will be in the course materials for the day. And that is that from me for now. Okay, guys, so thank you very much for your original feedback. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this. We will be doing this for the next week or so. And, well, I'm looking forward to seeing what amazing things you create. All right, guys, that's it. We'll see you soon.